My name is Eleanor Wright. I'm 32 years old, and I didn't leave my 5-year relationship because we had a fight. I left because, in one single moment, the man I loved finally said the quiet part out loud. He didn't just reject a conversation. He rejected a future. And when he screamed, "Get out!" I realized he didn't mean my body needed to leave the apartment. He meant my future needed to leave his life. People love to describe breakups like explosions, like they're always loud, like they're always obvious. Screaming matches, slamming doors, tears, final words shouted down hallways. That's not what happened to me. What happened was worse. It was the slow, ugly realization wrapped in silence. The kind of silence that sits on your chest. The kind that makes you feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. The kind that tells you the truth is coming and you're not going to like it. It started on a night that was supposed to be quiet, ordinary, forgettable. We had just left his younger sister's engagement party. She'd been with her boyfriend for 18 months, not even 2 years, and there they were, ring flashing under warm restaurant lights, everyone cheering, hugging, crying happy tears, taking pictures. I clapped. I smiled. I meant it. I wasn't jealous of her ring. I was jealous of her certainty. I was jealous of the way her future was being celebrated openly, like it was real, like it was allowed to exist. On the drive home, the city lights blurred past the windshield. The car felt too small for all the thoughts pressing against my ribs. I didn't plan to say anything heavy. I really didn't. I just said softly, "They seem really happy." He nodded, eyes on the road. And then, before I could stop myself, I added, "It kind of made me think about us." Silence. Not the comfortable kind, not the thoughtful kind, the kind that tightens your throat, the kind that makes your stomach drop because you can feel the conversation turning into a minefield. "We've been together a long time," I continued carefully. "Longer than most of our friends who are married now." I tried to keep my tone calm, adult. I think it might be time we talked about where we're going. Our timeline, what we're building toward. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. I watched his knuckles go pale under the dashboard lights. "Can we not do this right now?" he said. "When would be a good time?" I asked. "Because every time I bring up the future, you shut it down." "I don't want to talk about it," he snapped. "Why not?" My voice shook despite my best effort to keep it steady. "After 5 years, don't you think I deserve to know where this is going?" That's when everything shifted. The air changed, like the car itself had flinched. "I said I don't want to talk about it," he raised his voice. "God, why do you always have to push? Why can't you just be happy with what we have right now?" Because what we had felt like it was standing still. Because what we had felt like a waiting room. But I didn't say that. "Not yet." I said, "because I don't want to wake up one day and realize I've been waiting for a future you never planned to give me." He pulled into our apartment complex and slammed the car into park so hard it made me jerk in my seat. "You want the truth?" he said. "Fine." He stared straight ahead like he was talking to the windshield, not to me. Like he couldn't handle seeing my face while he said it. "I don't know if I want to marry you," he said. "I don't know if I want to marry anyone. And honestly, I'm exhausted by you making me feel like there's something wrong with me for not being ready. My chest burned, like someone had poured hot water into my lungs. Pressuring you? I whispered. I've asked about our future maybe 3 or 4 times in 5 years. That's not pressure. That's communication. Well, it feels like it, he said. And I need space. I need you to stop making me feel like I'm failing some kind of relationship test. I'm not testing you, I said. I'm asking if you see a future with me. He got out of the car and slammed the door. I followed him inside, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The apartment felt different the second we stepped through the door. Smaller, colder, like it already knew what was coming. He turned on me. You know what? He said. Maybe we need a break. Maybe you need to figure out why you're so obsessed with a piece of paper that doesn't even mean anything. It means something to me, I said quietly. Because it did. It wasn't a piece of paper. It was a promise. It was protection. It was the difference between building a life with someone and just renting time. Then maybe we want different things out of life, he said. Do we? I asked. Because I've been clear about what I want for years. You're the one who keeps avoiding this conversation. That's when he exploded. Not in a movie way. Not dramatic, just ugly, real. Get out. The word hit me like a slap. I can't do this right now, he continued, voice rising. I need you to leave. Go stay with your sister or a friend or whoever. I can't even look at you. I stood there. 5 years of shared space, shared routines, shared plans I thought were mutual, reduced to an order. And I waited for the version of me he expected. The version that begged, the version that cried, the version that apologized for having needs. But something in me went still, something cold and clear. Okay, I said. He blinked. What? Okay, I repeated. I'll leave. There it was, the flicker of surprise on his face. Confusion. Because he didn't expect me to agree. He expected me to perform. He expected tears. He expected me to shrink myself down until my desire for a future sounded unreasonable again. I didn't give him that. I went to our bedroom and pulled my duffel bag out of the closet. My hands were steady. That shocked me. I thought I would be shaking. I thought I would be falling apart, but I wasn't. It was like my body had finally accepted something my heart had been refusing to name. He followed me, and the anger in his face started fading into something closer to panic. What are you doing? He asked. Leaving, I said, folding clothes, like you asked. I didn't mean forever, he said quickly. I just meant for tonight, so we can cool off. I know what you meant, I said, but I'm done. Done, he scoffed. You're breaking up with me over one argument. I kept folding, shirt, jeans, socks, simple motions, like I was packing away a version of my life that no longer fit. No, I said, and finally I turned to look at him. I'm breaking up with you because after 5 years, you can't have a basic conversation about our future without telling me to get out. That's not one argument. That's a pattern. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. By the time I zipped the bag, he was crying. I watched him carefully, trying to decide if the tears were real. After 5 years, I still couldn't tell, and that told me everything I needed to know. Before I left, I walked to the kitchen. I opened the drawer where I'd been hiding something for months, a small white box. I placed it on the counter. Next to it, I left a note. 2 words, dodged bullet. Then I walked out, and I didn't look back. That was the night my life split in 2, and I didn't know it yet, but his panic hadn't even started. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my sister's couch, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slow, uneven circles. The sound sliced through the quiet like a metronome, counting down something I couldn't name yet. My phone buzzed constantly on the coffee table. Calls, missed calls, voicemails. I didn't open them. I didn't want his voice in my head again. I didn't want to absorb his confusion like it was my responsibility. Near dawn, the screen finally went dark. The silence felt louder than the noise ever had. And that's when the memories came in waves. Not dramatic ones, small ones. The kind that make you realize how deeply you built a life around someone without noticing. We met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. He was standing near the bar, tie loosened, laughing too loudly at something someone said. He looked comfortable in a room full of people, like he belonged anywhere he stood. We talked for hours, nothing earth-shattering. Just easy, familiar, like we'd skipped the awkward beginning and landed somewhere solid right away. We started dating a week later, moved in together after 2 years. Shared an apartment, a couch worn into the shape of our bodies, a Netflix account that somehow knew our moods better than we did. From the outside, we looked stable, and for a long time, I believed stable was enough. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-sized development firm. I like systems, timelines, knowing where things are headed and what it takes to get there. I've always been responsible with money. 3 years into our relationship, I started saving for a house down payment. Not because he asked, because I believed we were building something together. And 8 months ago, I started saving for something else. Something I never told him about. The ring. It sounds strange even now, saying it out loud as a woman. But it wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a power move. It wasn't a test. It was practical, thoughtful, me. He wasn't the type to plan surprises. He got overwhelmed by big gestures. So I decided that when the time felt right, I would ask. Not publicly, not extravagantly, just honestly. I saved every extra dollar. I skipped trips, cut back on little indulgences. The ring cost $6,200, a princess-cut diamond in a simple white gold band. Nothing flashy. Because he always said he didn't like flashy things. I asked his friends subtle questions. I paid attention to the pieces he lingered on when we walked past jewelry stores. I thought that was love, attentive, patient, intentional. But even then, there were signs. Little ones I brushed aside. Whenever marriage came up in group settings, he'd make a joke. Sounds expensive. Couldn't be me. Or he'd suddenly need another drink, change the subject. I told myself he was private. I told myself not everyone likes discussing milestones publicly. I respected that. or at least I told myself I did. Looking back, I see how often I made excuses for his silence, how I translated avoidance into complexity, how I convinced myself that loving someone meant waiting quietly while they figured themselves out, no matter how long that took. 5 years sounds long when you say it out loud, but when you live it day by day, it sneaks up on you. A year becomes not yet. 2 years becomes soon. 5 years becomes the question you're no longer allowed to ask. That night at his sister's engagement party, watching everyone cheer for a future being celebrated openly, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, just enough. I didn't want pressure. I didn't want ultimatums. I wanted clarity. And somehow, asking for clarity made me the enemy. By morning, I listened to one voicemail. Just one. His voice was shaky, apologetic, confused. "I didn't mean it like that," he said. "You know I didn't mean for you to leave. We just needed space." Space. The word felt hollow, because what he really wanted was time without accountability, and I had finally stopped offering it. I turned my phone face down, and I made myself one promise. If I went back now, nothing would ever change. Not because he couldn't change, but because he didn't have to. Not while I kept returning to the same place. The same waiting room. The same silence. I went back to the apartment on Saturday, not to see him, to retrieve the pieces of my life I'd left behind. I timed it carefully. He'd texted earlier in the week saying he'd be out all afternoon. I didn't respond, but I memorized the window anyway. Walking up to the building felt surreal, like visiting a place I used to live in a dream. The hallway smelled the same, cleaners and old carpet. The elevator mirror still made me look smaller than I felt. When I unlocked the door, the apartment was silent. Too silent. The first thing I noticed was that nothing had moved. The couch pillows were exactly where I left them. My mug was still in the sink. The throw blanket was draped over the armrest like it was waiting for me to sit down and pretend none of this had happened. And there, on the kitchen counter, was the ring. Still in its box, still sitting next to my note. Dodged. Bullet. I stared at it longer than I meant to, not because I regretted leaving it, because I finally understood what it represented. It wasn't just a proposal. It was 5 years of patience, 8 months of saving, a future I had been building alone. It was proof that I had been planning a life with someone who couldn't even stand to talk about one. My phone buzzed. A text. "What is that ring? Is that real? Were you actually going to propose to me?" 3 messages, sent minutes apart. Like he'd suddenly discovered the weight of what he'd thrown away. Like the idea of commitment only mattered once it was no longer available. I didn't reply. What was there to say? Yes. I was planning to ask you to commit to a future you openly told me you didn't know if you wanted. And I was willing to do it gently, carefully, in a way that wouldn't overwhelm you. I was willing to do everything except ask for what I needed too loudly. But I wasn't that person anymore. I packed quietly. Clothes, shoes, books I loved more than I realized. Small things that felt heavier when lifted one by one. Halfway through, I paused in the bedroom and looked around, and something hit me. The hardest part wasn't leaving the apartment. The hardest part was admitting that I had been living in a relationship where my future was treated like an inconvenience. I took one last look at the ring on the counter, and I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. Because the moment he told me to get out, he gave me clarity I'd been begging for years. 3 months passed. I moved into my own apartment, smaller, quieter, mine. The ring stayed in a drawer at my brother's house. I didn't know what to do with it yet. Return it? Sell it? Let it sit there as a reminder of what waiting too long costs? I figured I'd decide eventually. What I didn't know was that my silence wasn't giving him peace. It was driving him toward panic. And soon he was going to learn something that people like him can't handle. I wasn't moving on to hurt him. I was moving forward because I finally could. I didn't go looking for love. That part matters. I wasn't scrolling dating apps at midnight trying to prove a point. I wasn't posting carefully curated, "I'm thriving" photos to get his attention. I was rebuilding quietly, learning the rhythm of my own space. Drinking coffee on my balcony in the morning. Letting the silence feel like peace instead of loneliness. And then, 6 weeks after the breakup, Daniel messaged me. We'd known each other in college. Not intimately, not dramatically, just enough to remember how easy conversation had been. He said he'd seen my relationship status change, and he just wanted to check in. No expectations. No pressure. We met for coffee. 3 hours later, the barista had asked us twice if we wanted refills. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity. Daniel asked questions and waited for the answers. He didn't deflect when I talked about my past. He didn't joke it away when conversations edged toward the future. On our 3rd date, he said casually, "I'm not dating for fun. I want a partner, eventually a family. If that's not what you want, that's okay, but I don't want to pretend." I remember staring at him, stunned, not because he was proposing, because he wasn't afraid of the word eventually. He didn't treat my future like a threat. We took things slowly, even though everything felt easy. 2 months later, we were spending most weekends together. I told him about the ring, the one I bought, the one I never used. I told him because I didn't want secrets. I didn't want another relationship built on swallowed truths. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't feel threatened. He just said, "That tells me how seriously you take commitment." A week later, at a small dinner with just the 2 of us, he asked me to marry him. No speeches, no audience, just honesty. I said yes before he finished asking. I didn't post the announcement right away. We took a few days just for ourselves. But when I finally shared it online, I didn't think about who might see it. I should have. Within hours, my phone started lighting up. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months. And then, a text from him. "Are you serious right now? You're engaged?" I didn't reply. Then came messages from his friends. "This is cruel. You're doing this to hurt him. He found the ring." He knows you were going to propose. How could you do that to him? The implication was clear. I was the villain now. Funny how quickly history can be rewritten when panic sets in. What they didn't know was that I hadn't given Daniel that ring. I bought him his own. Different stone, different style, a clean beginning. The old ring stayed in a drawer, untouched. I stayed silent, not because I was afraid, because responding would give him what he wanted, engagement, proof that he still mattered enough to disrupt my life. But silence doesn't always calm people. Sometimes it makes them louder, more reckless. And that's when his grief turned into strategy. He didn't just contact me. He contacted my family, my brother, my mother, even my grandmother. He told each of them a version of the story where he was confused, blindsided, abandoned. Where I was impulsive, emotional, unreasonable. Where I threw away 5 years over one argument. Watching someone rewrite your life in real time is a strange thing, especially when you lived every moment they're now denying. Then he found Daniel online. He sent him a long message, paragraphs carefully written to sound concerned, reasonable, almost kind. I think you deserve to know who you're getting involved with. She makes big life decisions without discussing them. She leaves the second things get hard. She did the same to me. Daniel showed it to me without hesitation. We read it together, and we laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was desperate. She asked me about marriage for 5 years, I said. I avoided it, but now I'm impulsive. Daniel blocked him. I tried to believe that would be the end. It wasn't. The next escalation came where I didn't expect it. My workplace. He called the main office and asked to speak with me about a personal legal matter. When the receptionist told him I was unavailable, he left a message implying we had shared assets and unresolved financial issues. We didn't. Our lease had always been in his name. Our finances were separate. I owed him nothing. But suddenly, HR was calling me into a meeting. I had to explain, carefully, calmly, that I was being harassed by an ex who refused to accept the end of our relationship. They were understanding, but I could see it in their eyes, the discomfort, the exhaustion, the quiet question. Why is he still doing this? Because he couldn't stand losing control. Because he didn't miss me the way love misses. He missed the version of me that waited. And when he realized I wasn't waiting anymore, he panicked. The worst part wasn't the calls, or the messages, or the lies. The worst part was the entitlement in it, like I was something he had misplaced, not someone who had left. Then, one evening, a mutual friend texted me, Mark, the quiet one, the one who listens more than he talks. Hey, he wrote, just a heads up. He invited a bunch of us over tonight. Pretty sure he's trying to get everyone officially on his side. Thought you should know. I stared at the message. I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I was tired. Let him talk, I replied. The truth has a way of showing up. I didn't realize how quickly it would. According to Mark, the night was less get-together and more trial. He poured drinks, put on music, acted casual. Then slowly, deliberately, He started telling his version. How I was emotionally unavailable. How I was obsessed with marriage. How I abandoned him without warning. How I flaunted my engagement to hurt him. And finally, his favorite evidence, the ring. He showed them photos. The box on the counter. The note. He talked about how cruel it was, how traumatizing it was to discover I'd been planning to propose while also walking out. What he didn't say, what he carefully avoided, was the part where he told me to get out. Mark waited. So did the others. Then Mark asked calmly, "Why did she leave that night?" My ex shrugged. "We had a disagreement about timing. She overreacted." "Did you tell her to get out?" Mark asked. There was a pause. The kind of pause where everyone in the room can feel the lie forming. "Not seriously," my ex said. "I was upset." That's when Lena spoke up. She'd known us both for years. The kind of friend who remembers everything, even when you wish they didn't. "Do you remember my birthday dinner last year?" she asked the group. "When someone asked you about marriage?" My ex stiffened. "You said," she continued, "and I remember this clearly, I honestly don't know if I ever want to get married. I don't see the point." The room went quiet. My ex laughed nervously. I was joking. But the damage was done. People started asking real questions. So why act blindsided? Why tell everyone she pressured you? Why scream at her to leave if you didn't mean it? He didn't have answers, just excuses. The gathering ended early. Not dramatically, awkwardly. People left confused, and for the first time, the story didn't belong to him anymore. Mark texted me later. "I think he thought we'd all rally behind him," he wrote. "It kind of backfired. Most people left confused. One person even said, maybe she was right to leave." I put my phone down and felt something loosen in my chest. Not victory, relief. Because the truth no longer needed me to defend it. 3 days later, he sent one last message. Not angry, not accusing, different, long, carefully written. He said he'd been thinking, reflecting. He said he knew he handled things badly. He blamed fear of commitment, his parents' divorce, unresolved trauma. He said he was finally ready to talk, finally ready to try. Therapy, effort, honesty. He asked if there was any chance we could start over. 5 years. It took 5 years, and losing me, for him to suddenly find clarity. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was tempted. Because I wanted to choose my words carefully. Because closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you choose. 2 days later, I replied, "I appreciate you sharing this with me. I understand you're hurting, and I understand commitment can be genuinely scary." I paused, then typed the part that mattered. "But you had 5 years to have this conversation with me honestly. Instead, you avoided it, deflected it, dismissed it. And when I finally asked directly, you screamed at me to leave." My hands were steady. I can't build a future with someone who only wants to work on things after I've already walked away. Another pause. I'm engaged now. I'm genuinely happy. I wish you well, but there's nothing to go back to between us. And then the final line. Please stop contacting me, my family, and my fiancé. This is the last message I'll respond to. I hit send. Then I blocked him. Everywhere. His number, his email, every social media account I could find. When I put my phone down, I expected to feel something dramatic. Relief, sadness, triumph. What I felt instead was quiet. Deep, settled quiet. 5 days passed, then 10. No calls, no messages, no indirect attempts. The silence this time wasn't empty, it was peaceful. Daniel and I started planning our wedding. Not rushed, not frantic, just excited. My family adored him. His family welcomed me like I belonged. Everything felt aligned in a way it never had before. The old ring was still in a drawer at my brother's house. A week later, I picked it up and turned it over in my hand. 5 years of waiting, 8 months of saving, a future that never existed. I sold it the next day. The money went straight into our wedding fund. It felt like closing a loop, like transforming something that represented waiting into something that represented moving forward. I'm not going to pretend the last few months weren't chaotic. They were exhausting, emotionally draining. Finding out your long-term relationship can implode over one honest conversation is jarring. Realizing how much you've been settling for is painful. Watching someone rewrite history to make themselves the victim is infuriating. But I learned something through all of it. When someone shows you who they are under pressure, believe them. For years, he showed me he couldn't talk about the future without shutting down. I kept hoping he'd change. He didn't. And when I finally stopped waiting, he acted like I was the problem. I'm done with that. Some people will say I moved on too fast. Some will say leaving the ring was cruel. Some will say I should have given him more time to figure himself out. But I gave him 5 years. That was more than enough. Someone doesn't have to be evil to be wrong for you. They don't have to cheat or lie or betray you in obvious ways. Sometimes they just don't want the same future. And instead of admitting that honestly, they keep you suspended, hoping you'll stop asking, hoping you'll stay quiet, hoping you'll wait forever. I asked one question in 5 years, just one. And the answer I got wasn't confusion. It was anger. And that told me everything. Because if someone truly wants a future with you, they don't punish you for bringing it up. They don't call you obsessed for wanting clarity. They don't treat your life plans like an inconvenience. They meet you there. They talk. They choose. The best revenge isn't spite. It's peace. And the moment I stopped waiting for him to be ready was the moment I finally became ready for my own life. So if you're listening to this and you're stuck in a relationship that feels like a waiting room, hear me. Don't confuse patience with love. Don't confuse silence with safety. And don't wait for someone to be ready when they benefit from keeping you exactly where you are. Because when someone shows you who they are, especially when they're under pressure, believe them. That's tonight's Judgment.